So we're from San Jose, and of course, everybody wants to know what is on Pat McAfee's mind. Really, what is on the WWE's mind and their reaction to the incredibly loud response from the audience to the Pat McAfee angle last week. But they tease us, of course, first because we see. I don't want to even talk about like the video recap because again, the video recaps are often very sort of revealing in what they actually want us to take away from these segments. And in this video recap, they included some things, omitted others. They omitted Pat talking about tickets being weak, or at least like tickets still being on sale. They omitted the line about, the lowest rating, which is no longer the lowest rating because last week certainly overtook it. They did keep Cody Rhodes making allusions to Pat's representatives, which, coupled with everything else that we're about to talk about, continues to suggest the idea that they are pushing some sort of upper management puppet mastery of all of this, with Pat just kind of merely being a pawn. So we start things off with Cody seeing Nick Aldis in the back. Aldis has to tell Cody not to put his hands on Pat under any circumstances, and he says this is under strict orders from people above him. So again, making those allusions. Jelly Roll then shows up. Aldis tells him not to engage with Orton after what Orton did to him a couple weeks back. Jelly then gives Cody one of his famous pep talks. Says this has nothing to do with Pat McAfee. Tells him this should just be about Randy and Cody Rhodes and their 20-year history. Tells him not to be distracted. Says he's fighting for something bigger this time. It's not just his story. So
I love these motivational speeches from Jelly Roll, who just follows WWE around the country, it feels like. I mean, why is he even here? to talk to Cody, I guess, and say, yeah. And then at the end of all that, just gives him a nice little pat, says, chew on that, champ.
So I'd certainly, number one, I think Jelly Roll is really good at these. And I think it's why they continue to script him in these segments. Number one, he's famous, okay, Neil? And if you're famous, then you can have as much airtime as you want. But secondly, I actually think he's a very strong performer in these sort of segments. He's able to emote really well. He's able to just kind of get you pumped up, like in the way that he speaks. But here, it seems to, like, the subtext of all of this is that it's somehow the writers rebelling against the direction that they are being given by TKO to insert this Pat McAfee storyline into their stories. Because here you had Jelly Roll basically say, this has nothing to do with Pat McAfee. This should be about Randy and Cody and their 20-year history. Don't get distracted. And when he says, you're fighting for something bigger this time, it's not just your story. Well, what does that mean? I mean, to me, it means that Cody is not just fighting Randy Orton. He's not even fighting Pat McAfee. He's fighting against TKO and Ari Emanuel and their continued influence into these storylines. Am I wrong for thinking that?
That's the implication. That's what I take away from it. And as we'll get to later on in the show, it's all far, far too in the weeds, I think, for the average fan. I think, and even for those of us who are steeped in all of this and like watch Pollock and Thurston each week and know all of the business side of things, know who Ari Emanuel is, know who Mark Shapiro is, and all of those things. I think the average fan is probably just wildly confused by all of this, wondering who the higher power in all of this is.
Well, what is the average fan these days, Neil? Because like judging by like this sort of writing, they're assuming their average fan knows. Maybe they're not, but like they're assuming a big chunk of their audience knows exactly what Cody is referencing when he says your representatives.
I think that's right, but the fans in attendance don't seem to have the reaction to that. And they don't really mention TKO very much. Pat did tonight, but they were kind of like shrouded in mist. Yeah. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be landing very well, I feel, with the crowds in the arenas, at least. So maybe the very online fans, yeah. So they don't like it either, though. You only have to look at X tonight, and it's know,
the thing's a fucking mess right now. Okay,
yeah, it's complete mess.
We're in the space now where we kind of have to like they're playing some sort of like game where they're trying to overcome it with more writing. They're trying to fix things while at the same time continuing the wishes of, I guess, Ari Emanuel in making Pat McAfee a character in the show, while at the same time other characters are actively fighting against that direction. So me even having to explain that sounds ridiculous. It's like it's a ridiculous idea for professional wrestling. All I can really say is that maybe they have some inspiration from WrestleMania 40 and what they kind of landed in with Dwayne Johnson. Yep. Very similarly, inserting his maybe desires, interrupting the plans for WrestleMania, interrupting Cody's story at that point, wanting to insert his main event against Roman Reigns in there before the audience came in and basically demanded the other thing. That was somehow effective because enough people knew what the story was. Are they simply wanting to replicate that, but with Ari Emanuel in place of The Rock?
I think the issue is, though, we're a week from tomorrow is a week from WrestleMania, and they don't have time to pivot with the story really anywhere from where they're already going. And in fact, one of the stories we didn't cover in the Excel portion at the beginning, because I knew that we would be talking about it during this show, is that there's wide reporting about a match booked for Backlash, which I think we'll just get to later rather than talk about it at the moment, which makes it seem like this is going to continue, this integration of McAfee.
Yes. Pat McAfee comes out, our big promo segment of the day. He's coming out and he's giving the finger to the entire professional wrestling audience. And he says of San Jose, what a shithole. Calls himself the hero of this whole thing, so he doesn't know why people are booing him. He says CM Punk is a spineless bum. And he asked if we liked it when he called him Pat McAfee, which clarifies, of course, that is indeed the insult that Punk threw at him. It might have also been the first time the word MAGA has been used on WWE TV.
Well, apart from Punk, yeah.
True. Yes, apart from Punk. Yeah.
But Punk's was at least debatable. Some people were saying you're just hearing what you want to hear.
Well, this confirmed it.
Of course.
Yeah. So Pat McAfee, Pat says Punk was saying all he was saying while he was wearing official WWE licensed merchandise. And he says that Punk has 283 things on sale for you. And so Pat McAfee wonders, when that TKO merch check comes through, which account does it go to? To the needy wrestling family who can't afford ticket bucket? Or does it go into the account that says, I'm sorry, Saudi Arabia? Ooh. So he did go there. He calls CM Punk a fraud. He says he's like a politician. He's all talk and no action. Pat says he is a man who has a chance to change things. And therefore, he says Punk is a man who has a chance to change things, but instead he gets into a room and rolls over like the bitch that he is. Pat says he is everything that Punk claims to be. And he says what that sloppy, fat bag of bones Punk talks about with high ticket prices, I couldn't help but agree. And if not for Randy, why would anybody want to spend their money to watch WrestleMania? He decided to help all of us out. And he called Ram Trucks, the sponsor of WrestleMania, and he asked Ram Trucks, why don't you pick up 25% of the bill for anybody that buys a ticket to Saturday night's WrestleMania from now until the end of Raw? And they said no problem. So immediately a graphic pops up, 25% off tickets for Mania Saturday night from now until the end of Monday Night Raw. Pat says, you can thank me, San Jose. And as this graphic is still on the screen advertising a 25% off sale for one night of WrestleMania, this audience boos. Pat then proceeds to call Sunday's WrestleMania ass. And he does not recommend anybody spending any money on that. But Saturday is where you get to see Randy Orton save this business when he wins his 15th championship. And San Jose continues to boo as Pat taunts them for never having won a Stanley Cup. First of all, do you want to talk about your thoughts on the Pat McAfee things first?
Well, the CM Punk stuff, the response to CM Punk's words on Monday, where's this going?
Nowhere, dude.
If we're to
not at WrestleMania, at least.
No, not at Mania, it seems, and not at Backlash if the reporting is correct, because Pat will be teaming with Randy against Cody and Jelly Roll. It seems. So it seems. That's what Dave Meltzer's hearing. We've reported
it's what John's hearing too.
So it just feels a bit pointless. The crowd, there was no kind of audible gasps or, oh my God, he went there with the Saudi Arabia stuff, or Punk being a hypocrite because of the officially licensed shirts that he's got. I continue to just really dislike this and feel like it's illogical. And for him to be the face of the sale, the guy, I'm going to be your hero. I spoke to Ram Trucks and da 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 da. And then, while the graphic is still up, as you say, he says that Sunday is ass and nobody should spend their money on it. I can't imagine that's a scripted line. I bet it won't make the Raw recap package, I'm pretty sure, for this. I don't know. It's still a bit of a mess. And we'll get to Cody's response, which I have a different opinion about.
Yeah.
But the Pat character here is just... I mean, I'd only be challenging channeling Cody if I talked about what Pat McAfee was in WWE in all the years that we've known this guy. The yeeter, the cheerleader, all of that.
Well, wait till you hear Cody's other side here, because Cody has plenty to say in retaliation to Pat McAfee. So out comes Cody Rhodes. He says, Pat, I don't think you belong here. He says you can grab one of these titles from Fanatics. You can even do a little fan entrance, and then you can go back and tell whoever sent you here, thank you, Daddy. So again, directing a message to Pat's puppet master. Cody talks about the term play wrestler and not knowing what it meant until last week when he was gasping for air while listening to Pat's promo. Cody brings up Pat's lines about the Attitude Era and tells him, hey, bud, that was 30 years ago. Again, directly addressing audience criticisms through Cody Rhodes. He also clarifies that Randy Orton debuted in 2002, and he watched the Attitude Era in high school. He was never active during the Attitude Era. Again, directly addressing audience criticisms of the writing of the promo last week. So Cody then brings up Paul Bosch. Pat uses buzzwords like IWC and marks, but Paul Bosch would never call the audience marks. He would call them customers. And then Cody says wrestlers like him who grew up in this business, they're not even just customers, they're family. Cody says Pat has a gift, and for the first time ever, the entire fandom agrees that they want to see Randy Orton and they don't want to see Pat McAfee. So Cody starts to lead a chant of "Go home, Pat." And this is when Pat responds by saying, I am home, you dipshits. I was born to be in this business. You were born into this business with a silver spoon. You're Gorilla's golden boy. And all I see is the fakest dude on earth. He calls Cody a cosplay champion that only wears suits because Flair said it was the right thing to do. Pat says if Orton doesn't win at Mania, he will never see or hear from him in professional wrestling again. So that, of course, adds some stakes to the match. The fans do chant "Go home, Pat." And this is when Cody suggests that Pat only wears shades because he's too high. Too high to remember that he was yeeting his brains out for the past 3 years, suggesting that he really doesn't hate this business. And he calls on Gunther to come out to put him to sleep, which maybe just calls back to his match with Gunther. McAfee calls Cody Stardust. He calls him a politicking bum sucking Triple H's ass. This is when Randy Orton appears on screen, having laid out Jelly Roll from behind the curtain. As he drags Jelly out, he starts orchestrating a sneak attack on the Cody. Randy and Cody brawl. Jelly then gets up and threatens to chokeslam Pat before Orton saves him. Pat then attacks Cody from behind, and the segment ends with Orton hitting a draping DDT before laying him out with the belt as Pat and Orton stand tall to end the segment once again. What a follow-up week 2 here. So, oh my God, I'm out of breath.
I will say this, I thought it was better than last week, but that is the lowest bar imaginable. I
don't think you can compare the two, Neil, because they're one of the same story. They're not really sort of like two different things you can compare on the same level. One directly builds onto the other, and one is directly trying to fix the other, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Where I'm coming from when I say that is largely from the Cody side of things, where everything Cody said, like you pointed out in the recap, was pretty much what people were saying about the criticisms that people were leveling at the ill logic of Pat McAfee here.
Yep.
Pat, when he was on commentary, was the guy who gave Michael Cole his enthusiasm and his smile back. He was the guy who got up on the table and yeeted and got himself out of breath every week. He clearly loved everything about WWE. And he was very rarely involved in angles. There was, of course, the Gunther thing, which Cody referenced here, but that was always to do with his role as commentator. So the heel turn itself is so weird.
Yep.
And the logic of this character is so missing that the attempt to rescue it from Pat's point of view just continued not to make any sense. Like, he's the guy fronting up a 25% off ticket sale. He's the guy running down CM Punk, bringing up Saudi Arabia and all these things. On the Cody side of things, Cody's the one sort of bringing us all back down to earth and saying the reality. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
The Attitude Era was 20-something years. He says 30, but, whatever. Split the difference. A long time ago, certainly pre-Randy Orton. Everything you said last week didn't really make sense. So Cody at least looks better, I guess, from that point of view.
I mean, yes, okay, sure. But I don't think they're fooling anybody, Neil. Like, you can't have bad writing only to have another character come out next week to talk about how bad the writing was. It doesn't wash away your initial bad writing. You're responsible for everything. So this is really weird, where like they recognize that they did wrong. They are taking audience critiques and now folding it into their lead character's dialogue in addressing how bad the show was last week. But I think it just kind of makes everybody look bad. The worst part of it is, Neil, what is the feud anymore here? What are we talking about in the lead up to Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania? They have gotten so far off track. This is now no longer a feud between Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. This is a feud between Cody Rhodes and TKO. Ari Emanuel trying to insert Pat McAfee into the storyline. And now this match is no longer for Randy Orton's 15th championship. It's not even for Cody Rhodes, like trying to find some sort of killer instinct. It's about Cody Rhodes trying to rid WWE of Pat McAfee and thereby TKO's influence in their storylines. And that is so stupid. That is so ridiculous. On top of that, you're building the side feud between Pat McAfee and CM Punk, which I don't think is anything more than just a bit of a dick measuring contest to fuel egos here and maybe to just like gain some social media buzz. Of course they could do the match, but that's not the plan for Backlash. Certainly is not the plan for the pay-per-view that they're trying to build to in 2 weeks. And the thing about that too is, yes, there are a lot of like maybe what you would consider to be like good lines, maybe like he talked about Saudi Arabia, pointed out Punk's sort of like inauthenticity, but like they're captivating in the moment. But what harm are they doing to your show long term? I mean, this was part of the criticism of the entire CM Punk's John Cena feud, and John Cena's criticisms of CM Punk in that buildup. Punk is definitely going to retaliate, but by the end of all of this, he'll have been insulted and addressed as somebody who is a hypocrite again, somebody who has gladly accepted Saudi money, has apologized to Saudi Arabia for previous comments, and continues to sell and make a whole lot of money through merchandising for WWE. So by the end, Punk will look bad. Pat will look bad, and I think Cody will look bad in all of this. So I don't see how they can get out of this without just completely abandoning ship. But even that will make them look bad. And as I'm saying this, I just think they're continuing to dig themselves into a bit of a deeper hole in it all.
I'm afraid so. I mean, I'm looking for the bright sparks. I'm looking for a counterpoint to what you're saying, and I can't get it. The only thing I can grasp at is that this certainly cements Cody as the babyface, whereas the original feud, without all of this bullshit, without Pat, without the worked shoot stuff, looked kind of like the crowd were going to be 50-50 because they love Randy, listening to the voices in his head and being the Viper. And they weren't maybe getting a little bit tired of Cody as, you know, the kind of baby face, you know. So it at least cements Cody's place. And
It does cement him as the babyface here, but that's not because the audience likes Cody more. It's because they like Randy a whole lot less than they did prior to all of this. So, you know, if Randy was up here and Cody was down here when all this started, Cody's still here, but Randy just happens to be down here now. He's not even a focal figure in this anymore. The feud is Pat McAfee and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we got last week. That's what we got this week. Pat as the avatar for...
The feud really is Cody Rhodes and Ari Emanuel. It's not even Pat McAfee.
Yeah, which again, I simply don't believe that a lot of the mainstream fans know who Ari Emanuel is. Yeah, they've heard of TKO. They know that the company got took over. They might have a passing interest in things like that. But yeah, the work shoot stuff, I just hate it. It does have so much overtones of late stage WCW, mid 2010s TNA, and like you said, Randy is taken down several notches here. He looked like an afterthought in his own program on this show.
Totally.
Also, just to say, what Pat failed completely to do with the follow-up was make any sort of sense of how they're saving the business through all of this. You know, they're going to save the fucking business. Him and Randy Orton. From what? From whom? What?
Yeah.
In what way? You know, all of that. There's so much that makes no sense.
Yeah. I will say, I thought like Pat's delivery was, I think, stronger than last week. And maybe that's just because I've gotten over like the shock of the stench of that initial turn. But I feel like there's a decent, you know, heel character in him if the on-ramp towards it was a lot better handled. There's good like heel energy there, but it just that all of this has just been so poorly like thought out and so poorly executed that it's really hard to give this any sort of like redeeming value.
Yeah. I don't think it's rescuable at this point.
Yeah.
You know, what are they going to do next week?
I can't wait to see. So in the pack, they're now doing a thing where Pat has taken Cody's title away from him, so he's holding the title hostage. So add that to the list of you know, overwriting in this particular storyline. Pat, as he drives out in his Ram truck, says, "Hey IWC and wrestling fans, marks if you will, you're welcome." So, oh my god. But yeah, like it's hard to talk about the show without just really thinking about the whole Pat McAfee thing, which continues to be just a giant mess of just the greatest magnitude this close to a night one WrestleMania main event. So it does get people talking, and like on some level, you wonder if that's what they're actually happy with. You know, whether or not people are engaging with it, whether or not social media metrics are up for Cody versus Randy as a result of Pat McAfee.
Or the IWC, you know,
in the end, Neil, as a result of all of this discussion, do you think more people will be watching this match with interest?
No. I had to think about that, but no, I don't think so. They will hope so. They probably think so. I think it's somewhat of a turn-off. I think in some of the messaging threads and groups I belong to, people weren't particularly interested, even out of curiosity, to see Pat McAfee tonight. And honestly, if they did, I'm not sure this will have primed them for even more next week.
Yeah.
And into Backlash as well.
I feel like there's because it's so topical that I think there will be like, I think curiosity in the way that like somebody might want to see a Jake Paul fight, and not to see great boxing, not to see certainly like quality, really anything, but to see, well, like the happening, to see what other people are talking about. I feel like this might have resulted in some of that. But it is a real shame that I think, had a chance at telling a really strong story based in a lot of their own lore between Randy and Cody Rhodes. And that to me feels like it's completely fumbled now and not possible. So we wait to see. We wait to see if there's a reveal of a higher power. Do you have a prediction right now of who actually wins the match?
Well, at the moment, my money would be on Randy Orton to win, because Pat has said he will never. No, it'd be a heelish thing to just go back on his word, but he said he will disappear completely if Randy doesn't win. But all the reporting is that Pat will be involved at this match at Backlash, so it sort of shows a hand if the Pat character is being truthful.
Mm-hmm. Yep, certainly it does. I mean, I would have chosen Randy to probably win anyway, just because prior to this, I felt the Randy character was quite hot as a heel, but especially after this, and I agree with you, with Jelly Roll attached to it all, I certainly see Pat McAfee sticking around, and therefore Orton winning.
It is WrestleMania month at postwrestling.com. Wei Ting and John Pollock go live all WrestleMania week beginning Monday, April the 13th. Sign up for the Post Wrestling Cafe and you will get live shows all week long leading into our coverage that weekend of WrestleMania 42. This month, we're also bringing you reviews of Spring Break 2 from New Orleans in 2018 and a special Patrons Pick edition of Rewind Away. Sign up now at postwrestlingcafe.com, and this month, new subscribers get 50% off for the first month. Head on over to postwrestlingcafe.com.